every decision I make, I'm going to make that decision as a Christian. Or every decision I make, I'm going to make that decision as a follower of Christ.
One action. Hey guys, welcome back to Keeping It 99. Here with another episode, part 4 of our Coptic Life series, or 5, one of them. We have a very special guest today, Mr. Mina Hanna. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, man. Honored to be here.
You're one of our first guests. If you want to go back and watch that.
I think I was your second.
You were the second guest, yeah. Third episode. If you want to watch that, it's up there.
Who's your first?
George.
First is the worst. Second is the best.
I mean, you know, Mina, I just wanted to say, because I've been saying this on the podcast a lot, but I just wanted to tell you, you know, thank you for everything you've done for this podcast. You've done a lot, whether you realize it. You've done it. I mean, you're the reason how we got our second episode recorded. You helped us improve for the third one. The equipment you're using now, you gave to me for free. The reason how we were able to record the first 40 something episodes was because you let me use a subscription for free. So that you've done a good bit. So I appreciate the support. It means a lot, and we'll just get started. So
it's good to me.
Yeah, you good?
I'm good.
All right. My first question for you is, what does it mean for you to be like Coptic Orthodox?
Oh wow, what does it mean?
Hey, Mina, make the words face your face. Is it like turn it upwards? Like
a little ear rape for your. I got it. Oh, words face my face, so put them down. Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yeah, there we go, Mina.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like the ones like at church.
No.
So what does it mean? I don't know. I feel like that's a tough question. What does it mean to be Coptic Orthodox? I think it doesn't really boil down to what does it mean to be Coptic Orthodox. It's more of what does it mean to, what does Coptic Orthodox mean, right? It's just a sect of Christianity, pre-denominational Christianity. So what does it mean to live out a life in a pre-denominational way following the Alexandrian rite, right? That's the big, broader way of asking what you asked me. And to me, that's kind of just living by what Christ taught us, what the Father, what is it? It's like Christ preached, apostles preserves, and the fathers passed down, whatever. I probably butchered that, but something along those lines.
Apostles passed down, fathers preserved.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's what it means to me, right? Because if I had to break down your question and assign meaning to every word you just said, so what does it mean to be Coptic Orthodox? So what does it mean to be, what is Coptic Orthodoxy? I'm just living the way, I don't want to say that Christ intended the church to live.
Yeah, and I think as Coptic Orthodox Christians, sometimes we lose sight of that, and we forget that. I like how you use pre-denominational. Like we are before all that, all the politics and stuff that happened, and it's just kind of a testament to who we really are. And I think that how the church doesn't change is very vital to, kind of our everyday lives. So. Mm-hmm. Now you're 24, 25, something like that. You're out of college or working. So what is it like in the working world being a Coptic Orthodox Christian versus just a normal guy?
Honestly, I'd say it's not too far off from being in school. You're going to face the same types of challenges. You might face them a different way or a different light, but you're going to face the same types of challenges that you did in school and I did in school and everyone did, right? Because you transition from being in school, what's something that you might face in school? Whatever, peer pressure or I don't know, whatever, something. You're going to face that same thing, right? It's not the fact that you're in school that you're facing peer pressure. It's the fact that you're surrounded by other people who have different ideology or different ways of thinking, and they're more open or maybe more bold about it, or maybe because it's more socially acceptable, they're talking about it. And then you have people like us who maybe go against the norm or in a smaller, in a big minority, if that makes sense, big minority, but a very slim portion of how people think. So you're going to get those same types of challenges with the peer pressure. You're going to get the same type of challenges of how do I be bold about what I believe in without coming off and seeming too arrogant or seeming like everyone else is less than me. Not that I think that, just, it's the same. It's the same. It's just a different way of doing it. I think once you get into work, people are a little bit more professional. I feel like shouldn't be like this, or maybe it isn't like this. But in college, you can say whatever you want, do whatever you want. There might not be a lot of repercussions, but in work, everyone is, more professional. There's a little bit sense of professionalism. They can't just say what they want. They can't just do what they want without, coming off or even getting in trouble.
So kind of like going through college, like there's obviously a lot of challenges in general with college, and then obviously like being Coptic Orthodox. Is there anything like specific that you faced, or was it kind of just like not really?
I mean, like I don't want to take away from, I know you're doing a series on being Coptic Orthodox, but I don't want to take away from that. But at the same time, it's nothing specific to being Coptic. It's nothing specific to being Orthodox. It's specific to being a follower of Christ. Like that's where everything comes. And I mean, you being in high school, you'll know better than me that, especially when you go to college, you're going to see a wide array of people from all the way, and I'm not talking about politically, but like left to right, like very, very far spectrum of how people think. So, I mean, it's nothing specific to being Coptic Orthodox. It's just a matter of, I live a certain life based on what Christ taught, and I would say the majority of the world doesn't.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like the majority of the world doesn't, and I think that alienates us by nature.
Yeah.
And I think that feeling of alienation a lot of times can get to you, and it can kind of make you almost like rethink how you live and kind of like want to start to fit in. So how do you fight against that feeling of just wanting to fit in?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that what the church offers, right? So not what God offers, but the church offers. One of the greatest things the church offers is community. And that community, we're lucky enough, we live in America at a point in time where you can go just about to any big city and you're going to find a large enough or a decent size Coptic community. So how to help with that alienation, or how to help with that feeling of loss, number one thing I'd say is finding that community that you have. And I mean, like you might not experience this yet, but like people graduate school and then they move to a different city for work, and then they get to work and they only know people at work. And it's a big thing about loneliness, and like all they do is work. And that's why you see people who are workaholics. And I see people who go to work Saturday, Sunday because they have nothing else to do and they don't know people. They're not as fortunate as us to have community. They're not as fortunate as us to, see other people that are like-minded, or even, have like things going on where they can just go and interact and be social with people. So that's the number one thing is community. And it's a great thing that we have community with people that were, like-minded, and also challenge yourself to think, why is somebody else thinking this? What kind of, there's a benefit to interacting with people who think differently than you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us in high school, like within the Coptic church, like we kind of take that for granted, like that sense of community. And a lot of us, at some point in our life, try to kind of like break away and almost like a sense of rebellion, try to seek other communities. Mm-hmm. So what is your advice to, like the rest of us that are kind of trying to keep these people like in the church?
To people who, my advice to somebody who was trying to get somebody who left church to come back to church?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Well, first off, there's nothing wrong with having an extended community. And there's nothing wrong with having people, like being close to people that are outside of your community. But like, it's a quote somewhere, Nate always says it. You're the average of your 5 closest friends, or 5 whatever closest people. So if you're hanging out with people that don't share your ideas, that don't believe the same things that you believe, that don't have the same morals that you have, and have different priorities than you by default are going to become like those people. So, yes, I think everyone should have friends outside of church. Because if you don't have friends outside of church, then the church becomes for you, by you. That's it. The church will never grow. The church will only be for the church. But it's not a matter of like, I'm going to hang out with people with a slick intent of bringing them in. But everyone should be able to be in a situation where what they believe in can be challenged by other people, and that they can back it up. If anyone asks a question and it can't be answered, then there's no reason in believing what you believe in, right? If somebody can pull your faith apart and then, they can't put it back together, that's a good indication of, maybe this is not what I believe. And that's what we believe as Christians. That's why we believe in the whole, especially as Orthodox people, is that this whole idea of mystery, right? So while we might not have a direct answer, we have this overarching, some people think of it as a cop-out, overarching idea that, there's something someone bigger than me that is doing things bigger than me. And, to answer your question, how do I bring these people back in? Like I said, everyone desires community. And I think naturally people desire community with people that they are aligned with, or that they have like either background with or cultural like alignment with. And like, it's not always going to be like, standing on the street saying like Jesus is coming, or that type of approach. I don't think that type of approach will ever work, of saying like, what you're doing is wrong and you need to come back. I don't think it will ever work. I think it's more like, number one, let me build a relationship with this person socially, or however you might want to do it, academically, whatever it might be. And then me being a light of the world, like God will do the rest. So it's not a matter of, I need to show you what you're doing wrong, and I need to tell you everything you're doing wrong, and you're not going to enjoy your life. Might be true. It might be true that they hate their life and they're depressed and everything they're doing is wrong, whatever it might be. Not to say that you can't be depressed or whatever because you're Christian, but, it might be true that their life sucks and they know it, but it's never, that brute force is never going to work. That coming down and yelling in somebody's face and showing them why they're wrong, even if they are wrong, will never work. Ever, ever, ever. So.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And I think that a lot of times as Coptic youth, like we're always stuck on the two extremes, I feel like, which is like very not Orthodox. Orthodoxy is the middle path. And a lot of times we're either like really in people's faces about it, or we're just so passive that we don't say anything, we don't do anything. We have this idea that you just let people do what they want.
Yeah, you don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah. So in finding that balance is very, very hard. I think especially for me specifically, with just what I do, in my personality, like it's very hard for me to kind of tone it back and find where that middle ground is. So what are some tips on kind of, bringing that back or pushing more a little bit? Yeah.
So first off, I think everybody is different. So I'm not saying you, but everybody that you might interact with is going to be different. So everybody that, you might meet somebody who hates church and will never open the Bible and doesn't care about anything, but is still willing to have a conversation with you about anything besides church. You having that conversation with that person is still a ministry in a way. You having that conversation and allowing that person into your life is a ministry of showing, who you are and what it means to be a true Christian or a true image of God. So, like I said, everyone's different. So there's different ways. Whereas, somebody that you might be more comfortable with and in your whole life, and, you might be able to sit them down and be firm with them and say, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're dumb, or vice versa. Same thing. Like me, like serving Sunday school, I can talk to people different ways based on my relationship with them. And maybe you guys know, but the more close I am with you, the more physical and the more like abrasive I'll be with you. The more comfortable I am with you, the more firm I am with you. Whereas somebody who I don't know is close, I take it slower, I take it easy with them until I get to know them. Then I'm, So everyone is different, and having a relationship with that person is the number one step. Having a relationship with that person is the number one step. You cannot gain anybody. You cannot convince anybody of anything until you're able to converse with them and see where they're coming from. And I think a big thing is say, if I'm talking to somebody and they have the exact opposite ideology or reasoning of what I'm saying, why are they saying that? And how do I understand their perspective? Instead of saying, okay, great, that's all wrong. Like a wise person will be able to see somebody who's saying something and say, okay, why are you saying that? Where are you coming from? And that's not to say that devalues your truth. If anything, that's helping you more like settle your case or get along what you're saying. Like, truth is truth. Nothing will change that. What happened in the past 2,000 years, what's been written down, all that stuff can never change no matter what. This is not like science, or this is not like, some discovery that's evolving. What happened. And whatever was going on 2,000 years ago in the church and all that good stuff, still relevant today. It's not something that's outdated. None of that stuff gets outdated. So truth is truth, and understanding somebody's perspective or viewing how somebody thinks is only an advantage to yourself. Because if you are calm and collected and actually let somebody be heard, I feel like you'll get more across to them than saying like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah, and I think even in my personal life, like, recently, like I've had a lot of conversations with people, like when it comes to, faith and like politics and dogma and all this stuff. And a very common theme is that there's something that I realize is that every single time someone asks a question, there's a person asking the question. And I think a lot of times we always want to answer the question instead of answer the person. And I think answering the person is so important because, you know, they're asking the question like for a reason. There's a why behind it. It's not just because sometimes it is just because they want to know. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times there's an, you know, ulterior reason to it. And I think when you kind of like what you're saying, when you understand that reason, when you understand that perspective that person is asking that question from, you know, that lens that they're asking it from, you can understand more, you know, why they think the way they think and how to approach that and apply that to, you know, different conversations, or to, you know, direct the conversation in a way that will lead them to be more perceptive to what you want to think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, understanding why somebody's asking something or where they're coming from is the number. Like, if I was a salesperson and I went up to somebody random on the street, I would be less successful than if I was a salesperson. Not saying like Christianity is sales, but I would be less successful than if I knew that person. Or, I mean, that's why we have tailored ads. That's why, you know, companies sell data and then they, you know, give us ads based off that data.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, the same way, there's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point. And in the book, he discusses, you know, different types of people and what they mean to make something go viral, basically, mm-hmm. make a social epidemic. And you can take that same principle of, you know, the types of people there are and how they play into that. And again, not like that Christianity is selling something mm-hmm. or making it, it's not a social epidemic, but you can apply those same principles to Christianity and how it spreads. And, you know, it's kind of like when St. Paul says, like, everyone has a role, right? There are people who, you know, aren't experts in one thing. There's people who, you know, are really good communicators. There's people who, you know, all these different roles. And I think each of us have to fulfill that role in the body of Christ to fully, you know, experience growth in the church. And I think the biggest issue that one of the biggest issues we're dealing with today, specifically as a Coptic Orthodox church, but Christianity in general really, is evangelism. And it's not that, you know, like you said, it's not that going out on the street and saying like Jesus is coming, but it's like really getting people to come to church by developing a relationship with them through God. And I think especially as high schoolers and as college kids, that's something that we really struggle with. Because I think a lot of times it's so hard to come to terms with ourselves and what we believe that it's hard for us to kind of extend that out to other people. So what are your thoughts kind of on, you know, how to kind of accept your own identity in Christ so that you're able to kind of portray that to others?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to believe it. So you have to understand that whether you agree with everything or whether you understand everything or not, that if there's some truth, there's all truth. There's no such thing as like, you know, half truth. Either it's all true or, you know, it's all bogus. Either he like rose from the dead on the third day and he raised Lazarus and he healed the blind man, or none of it exists, you know? So you have to really anchor yourself in saying, this is what's true and nothing is gonna waver that. And then that opens up the personal quest of saying, or the personal like journey of saying, how do I embody that, or how do I live that myself? And then I think the rest is kind of natural, right? So if I were to take all those commands of Jesus, if I were to take all those things and do them, I think it will come naturally when I interact with people. I think that, right, that if I'm the light of the world, right, in the city that is set on a hill cannot hide, right? So, and what does that end with? Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works. And then what?
Glorify your Father who's in heaven.
Yeah. Not you. Not say, oh, this guy's such a great guy, but the glory will go to God. So if you do good and if you follow all his commandments and if you live a life according to what he laid out to you, then naturally a city that is set on a hill or a lamp that will not be hidden, you know? Naturally your light or his light through you will not be hidden. And then everyone will see your good works and then glorify your Father. Nothing to do with you, but glorify your Father who's in heaven. Is that answer your question?
It's a great answer. And I've heard this, like, obviously you say this every single day in the Ekbeya, but, you know, it's also, you know, people say like, we're a vessel for Christ, right? Like when you drink water from a cup, you know, you notice the water. You don't really notice the cup.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're not tasting the cup, you know? So in the same way, like we're the cup for Christ to others. right? We're just the vehicle. And I think that when we take this role of being the vehicle and take that humility, which I think is extremely important, that we're able to really live out that life. You know, if we take this idea that we are just, you know, we're nothing, you know, we are the vehicle for Christ. We're just there so Christ can use us, you know, for his will and for his glory. Then that empowers us to kind of take everything off ourselves and just be like, everything we have is for you. And I think that's very powerful, and it's something that I personally have really struggled with, and I think that a lot of Coptic youth struggle with, and or Christian youth in general struggle with, is kind of not like giving up your life for Christ and going to live in the desert, but just making everything centered around Christ and purposing everything in your life for Christ. I think that is so hard. So how have you kind of dealt with that?
Yeah, so that's a hard thing, right? So I think it's natural for people to compartmentalize. Pronounce that right. So it's natural for people to come to church on Sunday morning and act like a Christian, because it's easy to come to church on Sunday when everyone else is acting like a Christian, or everybody whatever, and act like a Christian. But so the number one thing would be to, I guess, remove the boundaries, or say every decision I make, maybe potentially I'm going to make it as if I was in church, or whatever the logistical might be. You know, every decision I make, I'm going to make that decision as a Christian, or every decision I make, I'm going to make that decision as a follower of Christ. So every decision I make has to, you know, coincide with what he's saying, or coincide with what he would want. It's the same thing, right? Christ describes himself as what to us? Do you know? I don't want to put you in the spot.
I mean, a lot of things.
Okay. Relationally, a bridegroom, right? So he described himself to us. It was a broad question, I know. But he described himself to us as a bridegroom. So he's indicating that we're in some sort of relationship, or some sort of lifelong commitment, or marriage, right? The same way, like if your dad or your mom or whatever decides, hey, I'm going to go on vacation for 2 weeks. How far would your dad get in that vacation? Or would he even be able to go on that vacation without telling your mom?
Yeah, not far at all.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't even be able to book, you know? So it's the same thing. Like, I can't do anything without thinking, like, no one in a relationship or in a marriage can do anything without thinking of their spouse. If I want to accept Christ calling me his bridegroom, and I want to be united with him in that true marriage, then I can't do anything without considering him. I can't do anything without bringing it up to him. You see what I'm saying? So it all goes back to that personal relationship, right? The same thing, say Mary, we venerate her. Why? Because she's the mother of God, and she did the physical thing that we're called to do, which is bear God. For 1 second, when she was pregnant with Jesus, she couldn't say, yeah, I'm not pregnant today. I'm going to go have some sushi and some wine. She could never do that when she was pregnant with him. She bore him unconditionally and nonstop for 9 months. And that's why we venerate her. And that's why we say all those things. Salvation of Adam, the grace of all that stuff. It's not because she is that. It's because her bearing God is the same thing that Elisha did when he bore God. And that's how he got the grace. Or Elisha, whatever. That's how he got the grace. Or that's whatever it might be. So that's what we're called to do, is to bear God, or join in that bridegroom. And there's probably a million different analogies of relationships that we're called to do. And it's a full-time thing. So going back to the more practical side, going to work or going to school or whatever it might be, it's difficult without a little bit of boldness to carry that out. It's like you imagine if you were dating a girl and you were like embarrassed if you were dating her, or you're married and you're embarrassed, or like if you went to work, you took off your ring and you didn't have any pictures of her at like work, and you never talked about her. How would that girl feel? I don't know if you know. Horribly. Very, very badly. Okay? And should never let you hear the end of it. It's the same thing, right? Like, I have to have a little bit of, sad to say, but we have to have a little bit of boldness, or a little bit of courage, or a little bit of pride in the fact that who I'm following, like where I'm going is eternal. What I'm going to do is eternal. And I believe, regardless of what anyone else says, or regardless of what anyone else believes, and I'm not trying to diminish anybody else, but what I believe is truth. And it's the fullness of truth. And this is what's going to get me through everything. Like, everybody's life sucks. It doesn't matter what you do, or everybody's going to have problems in their life. But what's going to get you through that is who you decide to take in your life the whole, full time. I'm talking about like your wife. I'm talking about what kind of things you decide to do full time. You decide to do, drugs to fill the void. You decide to do whatever it might be, a long list, TikTok, whatever it might be. What you decide, what you do to go through, or what you decide to use to cope and get through this stuff is what's going to define you as a Christian. That's what's going to make the difference. So going into work every day or going into school or whatever it might be and being ashamed or not being, I'm not saying you have to wear a huge cross and whatever, go to church in your tunya, but or go to school in your tunya, but
sorry,
you shouldn't be ashamed or you shouldn't be afraid to bring it up. You've been there and I've been there. It comes up naturally. Yeah. Right? Those conversations come up naturally. It's up to you how far you want to take them, or if you want to brush them off or whatever it might be. That stuff comes up naturally. So it's up to you how bold or how courageous or how proud you want to be of it. And that's going to make the difference.
And I think that, that being proud of who you are in this world has become sort of like a distortion. I think a lot of people are proud of the wrong things. And a lot of people, people that I know personally, are proud of doing drugs, or proud of, they'll talk about it openly. Mm-hmm. Right. And then you have people who, follow Christ and live a godly life, and they get called lame or they get called losers. I know I do all the time. And it's weird because, people are always taught to, express yourself and express what you believe in, and, all these different movements that we have. But the second that Christianity is brought up, all of a sudden, all that stuff doesn't exist.
Yeah. I don't know how it is in high school. I believe it or not, I graduated high school 9 years ago or 8 years ago. So, but I know in college, and maybe when you get older, I know we feel if I say truly who I am, people are going to think less of me. People are going to, talk down to me just because I'm Christian. But majority, I'm not just I'm not, whatever. If you had this happen to you, had this happen to you. But majority of the time, if you're proud of who you are, people are going to respect that. And if you show who you are, people are not going to be oh my gosh, he's one of those. Majority of the time, people are going to respect that. Actually, that's what's in now, right? That's what's respecting people's opinions. I could come out and say I'm a lizard, and people have to respect that. So yeah, some people don't respect the fact that I'm a Christian, and they respect everything but that fact. But a majority of people, I'd say, would respect that decision, or that, me being straightforward about how I live my life. Or no, I'm sorry, I don't do drugs. You don't have to be I don't do drugs because I'm a Christian. No, I don't do that. And I think that's all you need to say. And if somebody presses you and asks you more, then you can say, oh, I don't do that because XYZ. I don't want to be a slave to anything.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, like you said, when you're straightforward, when you're upfront, people notice that. And people notice that you're not scared to be a Christian. And I think, that's something that the Coptic Church, throughout its history, that's one of the most defining factors about it is the lack of fear. Yeah. Another name for our church is the Church of the Martyrs, or the Church of the Persecution, because that's just what life is as a Coptic, as it has been for thousands of years, and as it still even is in Egypt, which you'll see later in the series. Sorry, Mina. I just had a plug, man. I had a plug. But in a lot of times, we take for granted the fact that we live in a country where being persecuted for your beliefs, for the most part, only goes as far as if someone really disrespects it, to just verbally say something to it, which obviously is not okay and it's not right. But we have the blessing of not having to live in constant fear. And I think it's kind of a calling for us to be bold and to be, upright about what we believe in. And I think a lot of times, because of social pressure or whatever, a lot of Coptic youth, and myself included sometimes, we just kind of feel what's the point? So what are your thoughts on that question? If, questioning myself, what's the point?
What do you mean by that?
If I, am thinking about what's the point in me continuing being Christian and living this different life and, being different from everyone else? Why can't I just not do that? What's in it for me, kind of?
Well, first off, I'm going to go back to the analogy of any relationship. If you were to enter any relationship and say, what's in it for me? That relationship is destined to fail.
Yes.
Destined to fail. And I don't have a elaborate answer or anything. I just always think of this quote by C.S. Lewis. You know what I'm about to say?
I don't know what you're about to say.
Just curious. But it's a famous quote. But he's saying if I die, and Christianity is fake, then I lose nothing because I'm dead. But if I die and Christianity is real and I didn't live my life as a Christian, then I lost everything. You know? So it's almost like too high value or too high risk for me not to care. You know? And I can say the same thing as being like difference of Christianities. Like, why should I as a Christian partake of communion? Or why should I as a Christian go to church for a long time? I could say the same thing. Like, if you die and none of that stuff mattered, what do you lose? But if you die and all that stuff mattered, you lose everything.
Yeah.
You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and I mean, I agree 100%. I think, that's a very good question to ask. And I think, like C.S. Lewis said it really well, it's, you always have to think of, like, I think a lot of times in normal situations in life, we think of what's the worst possible scenario. A lot of times you hear motivational speakers be like, what's the worst thing that can happen if you take this decision? Right? It's just whatever. Like, what's the worst thing to happen if you ask a question, you just don't get an answer? It's the same type of thing. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen if you believe in Christianity? It's not real. Right? That's the worst possible thing that can happen.
What do you have to lose? Like, what you have to gain is so much more. Like, what do you have to lose? Maybe a couple hours every Sunday. What do you have to gain? Everything. And like, even if you don't believe in that afterlife, okay, what do you have to gain on this life? A lot. Like, you have some sort of explanation of why things go crazy in your life if you believe in this higher power. You have some sort of relief or peace or whatever it might be, even if it's not real and you believe in yourself. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm not trying to say like it's a hoax and that's why, like, but you're gonna get something out of it. Whether it's real or not. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, whether it's community, whatever it might be, like, the gain is way more than the loss.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of times, like, when we hear like, if you're a Christian, like, you will endure suffering, and which is true. I mean, you're not. Everyone's gonna suffer. Everyone's gonna go through something, but there are positives, and I think a lot of times we don't really look at that and we look past that because a lot of times as human beings in general, we want people to sympathize and empathize with us. We want people to feel what we feel.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we, play up situations worse than they actually are. But a lot of times we have to take the humble approach and look at our life and be like, we have so much, right? Like, one of the most beautiful exercises you can do is just like being grateful, having like a gratitude journal and just writing down one thing a day what you're thankful for. Because real quickly, I mean, you'll realize the list doesn't really end. Things just, you can write from at this second till the day you die, to the second you die, and just nonstop write things you're thankful for, and you will not run out of things. So I think as Christians, a lot of times, we talk about, or, how much our life sucks, how much the world sucks and all this, but it's like, there's just so much more good than there is bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's all perspective. Your life can suck compared to somebody else's, but there's somebody who might be in a worse situation to you, to who your life is amazing. And it's up to you how positive you want your life to be. I think I see a lot of people who don't only see the negative or only see how much life sucks, and they never look at the positive lining. They never look at the positive things, the positive part of things. And I think that's Christianity in a whole, is understanding the positive. Always looking forward, right? We look for the resurrection dead and the life to come. So what might suck here might have nothing to do with what's to come, or might have what happens, like all the like the sickness, the grief, sorrow, groaning, all that stuff has fled away. So because I look for the resurrection, because I look for something that's to come. Death, which used to be like the worst thing in the world, now what do we say about death? Where is your sting? It's kind of flipping it or adding that silver lining to things.
Yeah, and I think that perspective, like adding that silver lining is what defines Christianity as just a belief system in general, is that, there's a lot of other religions and belief systems that look at things from a negative perspective. Like Buddhism is a great example. Hinduism is a great example, where everyone will suffer. Everyone will endure suffering. They have I forgot what it's called, but they basically have this list of things that they say people will suffer from, and that's just all they talk about. And that is kind of sad to think about, but in Christianity, it's, you know, it's always that hope, right? A Christian without hope is not a Christian, right? Hope is what kind of, that is what Christianity is the hope in the resurrection, the hope in Christ's second coming, the hope in our sins being forgiven. And that hope, which comes from faith, is so powerful. And the people who I see that are the most spiritual in my life are the people who I see who are the most at peace, who are the most joyful, who, you know, really embody what Christ is. They have the most hope. You know, they don't put their hope in princes and things of the earth, but they put their hope in God, right? They don't, you know, hope that the tax rate falls down. They don't, you know, hope that, you know, pollution ends or whatever they want to, climate change, whatever, but they hope that God is there, and they hope that they know God is there, and they hope that God is going to be there for them.
Well, that's their hope, right?
Exactly. And I think that's just, you know, what we need to do as Christians is to have that hope and sincerely believe in it, instead of just being like, yeah, you know, God's there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, having your hope in Christ, I think it makes a huge difference in everybody's life. I think having your hope in something that is like what, I'm gonna ask you a question. What would you say is the number one thing that people desire in life, or that people want in life, or in relationships?
Like a sense of belonging, sense of like love or something.
Consistency, right? They want consistency. I think I could say that about myself. I think, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people want consistency. And if I'm going to chant, especially every day in these 50 days, that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, putting my hope in that is going to give me that sense of peace and consistency that I think people naturally desire. If I believe that I'm created by somebody, then I believe that creator had the power and had probably did create in me some sort of drive or some sort of intuition or some sort of desire for something that he only can fulfill. You see what I'm saying? Like, if he created me, and he created me to do what? To live with him, or to commune with him, then I understand, or I believe, or it would make sense that I have some sort of desire that can only be fulfilled by a relationship with him or commune with him. So putting that hope in something that is consistent is going to take you a long way. It's going to give you a lot of peace, or give you or let you get through this hard time. Everyone's going to suffer, like you said and we said before. Everyone's going to suffer. Everyone's going to have a horrible life. It doesn't matter who you are. But having that hope in something that is consistent, I think, is going to make you get through it a lot easier. And
I really like your point about, like, the creator created us and put it intuition or drive of, you know, something the creator could only fulfill. And it, like, just a random story that popped in my head when you said that, is Pinocchio. Very funnily enough, is that Pinocchio was created to, you know, be the son of the
Giuseppe or something,
whatever the dude's name is. And when Pinocchio decided to not do that, you know, and started to lie and stuff, his nose got bigger, and he kind of felt like something was missing until he had to go back and make up for all his wrong, or I don't know really how the story goes, but that type of thing. Right. The same thing with the prodigal son, which is a biblical example, where it's, you know, even in our own lives, in our human to human relationships, right? If, like, we have some, like our parents, for example, like, a lot of times, I know in my life, like, there'll be times where you don't really want to talk to your parents. You kind of, you know, it's a very, like, high school thing. You kind of just want to get away from them or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, over time, you realize, like, there is no one who will, you know, have that parental love for me like my parents will. There's no one who will satisfy that part of me like my parents will, you know? So if that's how it works on earth with our human relationships, how much more would that desire for Christ be, and that love for Christ be, to, like, take it from a human level to a God level? Like, how much more is that expounded? And I think that that's just a very good logical, you know, example and reasoning for that. Yeah. So how exactly do you know, go about, like, having Christ in your daily life?
Good question. Never heard that before. I think sticking to the basics is a big thing. So like the Sunday school answers. So like crossing yourself before you leave the house, or crossing the house before you leave it, or like putting the sign of the cross on a test, or whatever it might be. You know, it's the little things that the church gave us, and that we see maybe our parents do, or other people around us do, that we think is like, oh, that's so archaic. Oh, that's so old. Oh, I don't care about that anymore, right? Some people might say that the church is overstructured, or the church has too many rules or too many things to do. But I don't think that's true, because it's that structure, it's those rules, it's those practices that really keep us going. That's the kind of stuff that really makes a difference in your life. You know, like you're going to college soon.
Yep.
I bet your mom told you call you every day, right? Right, because you're gonna move out.
Yes, that's true.
Yep. How'd I guess? So she's telling you call you every single day. Yeah, it could be a great thing if you came home every weekend and you brought, like, I don't know, flowers and cheesecake or whatever it might be. Yeah, cool. But you didn't talk to her through the whole week. What do you think she would prefer?
Like talking to her throughout the week.
Right. It's the same thing. I could come to church every Sunday and I could dress up and I could dress deacon, or I could do whatever. But if I don't talk to her the whole week, I guarantee you that God would say, I prefer you to talk to me for 1 minute or 2 minutes every single day than to do this whole grand gesture and forget about me for the rest of the week. Because then how would your mom feel if you didn't talk to her the whole week, and then you saw her for like 1 hour and you're like, all right, that's it. See you next week. How would she feel? She'd feel like you didn't care. She's going to feel like, you don't really care about her, that you're only doing it just to make her, that you're just doing it to make appearance, whatever it might be. It's the same way. Like, who gave you those feelings? Who gave her those feelings? It was God. And he has those same feelings. Right? God is a jealous God. He's going to get jealous of you and what you're spending your time doing and who you're talking to throughout the week. It's the little things that make the big difference.
Yeah, and it's like, just like you just said, like God put those feelings in her. It's like, it's a mirror. Our relationships on earth are like a mirror of what, I don't know where I got that one from. It's like a mirror of what it's like in heaven. It's kind of like a combination of all the different relationships we have in, one being. So, yeah, I think that's all, Mina.
Thanks, Isaiah. It's great being here.
Well, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, turn on post notifications, and see you next week. Thank you.